Merry Christmas to you, and we're excited as we're kind of rolling into this series called One Crazy Christmas. You know, Christmas is a pretty crazy time of year, isn't it? I mean, the traffic's increased, right? The shopping is insane. You can do online shopping now. That is a weird part of our world that, didn't exist just a handful of years ago. But all the things that are crazy, corporate gatherings, right? The office party, work Christmas parties, the craziest thing of all of them is the family gatherings. If you ask me, it's always the crazy one because there's some people you want to see, some people that oh, that's right, I forgot they were going to be there. And then there are always that person that's the crazy one. There you got that one crazy family member that shows up. You never know what's going to say. Now, let me just say this out loud. If you can't think who the one crazy family member is, guess what? That crazy family member is you. But the truth is that we do lots of things, whether it's gathering with our family or different kind of things that we do throughout the year. All these things that we're a part of that we kind of make happen, we do them so that we have like this little bit of connection from generation to generation, like a family gathering. You get together and you pass on this kind of like generational stories and connections. And this is Aunt so-and-so, and this is your uncle or your cousin, and you guys kind of get that, talk apart it, just kind of make sense out of it because the generational connection is there. That's part of why we do traditions in general. We have these things that we do that kind of pass from one generation to the next, an idea or a value that's important to us. About 2007, just all that long ago, a new tradition in American Christmas culture kind of began to emerge. Maybe you remember when it first started happening, the elf on a shelf. Now, if you had kids that were little in 2007, you probably picked up on that trend, that started doing this. But, this elf that appears on a shelf and he kind of watches over your kids and tells your kids that, like, if you do something bad, he goes and narcs you out to Santa, I think is how it works. And all this kind of typical kind of tradition. And it really is intended to pass on yet one more tradition from one generation to the next generation. I like the elf on a shelf idea. We never did it with the girls, but I think it's hilarious because you can be pretty creative. I mean, first he's just sitting on a shelf, right? And it's funny, oh, there's the elf on the shelf, and you give him some, silly name. But then people do things like this one, like where they put the elf in a hammock, put some toilet paper there, gave him a little hammock thing. Now, this is part of the reason I'm sure Sheila didn't let me do this, because I think this one was funny, where the elf is making lemonade and selling it for 25 cents. There's a ton of more inappropriate ones, but I pulled those out because I didn't want to get us really in trouble. But traditional things like nativity scenes are a part of our whole story, isn't it? Things that we put together, and we put them down on a specific place. It has all of the cast of characters. Can I just point out something? That this is a pretty crazy cast of characters. I mean, if you really think about who is involved and you take out the whole idea of the Christmassy feel or the traditional feel, if you take it out of this kind of classy looking, dimly lit, pretty, kind of polished nativity scene, and you start thinking about the fact that the cast of characters that were brought together to bring us the Christmas story, it's a pretty crazy group of people. It's a pretty crazy mixture. I mean, you got kings and wise men, you got shepherds, you got angels, you got animals, you got all these different things. You got all these different classes and groups of people, including teenage parents, all brought together to bring Jesus into the picture. I mean, just think about it for a second. Before Jesus, like at the very beginning before the whole story really kind of starts to unfold, there's this couple named Zechariah and Elizabeth. And an angel comes to them and tells them that they're going to be pregnant with a man named John. And John is going to be the one who foretells that Jesus is coming. He's going to be Jesus' cousin too. And the angel comes to Zechariah and to Elizabeth, and he comes to Zechariah first, and he tells Zechariah, hey, your wife's gonna get pregnant. Now he's got this problem, because here's Zechariah's response. Zechariah said to the angel, do you expect me to believe this? I'm an old man, and my wife is an old woman. You know why he said that his wife is an old woman? There's two reasons. The first one is she's an old woman. The second one is because he's talking to the angel and not to his wife. Because the truth is, his wife is old. They're very, very old, and she'd never been able to have any kids. So when this angel steps into the picture and tells them that they're going to be parents even though they're old, that's a new character that God brings in to the story. Contrast that with Mary. We talked about this verse last week. The angel showed up to her and said, "Don't be afraid, Mary." She's probably 15, 16 years old. You have found favor with God, and you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. Like, can you see the cast of characters that Jesus is assembling around his birth? And he brings together both young and old. That's a big deal, because the story of Christmas is really not just some nostalgic old story. It's a story of bringing things together that don't naturally go together, young people and old people. That's really where this story begins. And it goes on from there. Look at this one. This is the shepherds. He says, and while they were there, time came for a baby to be born. This is Mary pulling in, right, to Bethlehem. And she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth, laid him in a manger, because there was no room available, no lodging available for them. You've all heard this story. Jesus was born in a stable, laid in a feeding trough. And that picture in your mind is accurate, that this wasn't a place that had been cleared out of animals. The innkeeper didn't say, "Hey, well, let me clear out the animals and make a nice pretty bed for you." He said, you can stay in the barn with the animals. Think about what Jesus brought together. And I mean, this may seem trite, but Jesus brought people and animals together. Jesus brought the created beings, the different species that God had created, all together for the purpose of witnessing his birth, young and old, people and animals. Look at what he says here in the next one. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. Big deal. This being born thing happened, and it concerned a king. And about that time, some wise men from the eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where's this newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we've come to worship him." It's interesting, isn't it? Who are these wise men? We don't really know much about them. I mean, there's only a few verses here and there. Maybe there's some historical evidence and lots of conjecture. But no matter where you think, I mean, we know they're from the east. We don't know what part of the east. We don't necessarily know what's meant by wise men. But we do know that they were studying the stars, right? They were people of means. They had some value because they brought very expensive gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. We often think there were 3 of them because there were 3 gifts, but there might have been 30. There might have been 20. We don't know. What we do know is there was more than one, because it calls them wise men. We know they're from the east, and we know that they were looking into the stars, and that they have some resources, and that they could get an audience with a king. So here's the interesting thing when you think about it, is that Jesus brings together the nobility and the commoners, the people with resources to visit a teenage mom, right? To visit poor people. And that's a crazy thing. When you start thinking about all that was brought together in this crazy cast of characters that God brings together to tell about his son, to witness his son coming into the world. Young and old, people and animals, people with resources and people without them. It's a crazy cast of characters. But the angel said to them, the shepherds, "Don't be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." Can we talk about this for a second? I mean, this is the statement that the angels, the host of angels, makes to the shepherds. And he says that it'll bring great joy for all the people. Do you see this togetherness in this cast of characters? But in this moment, we see God using the story of Jesus to bring 2 people together, the heavens and the earth. It's what Jesus said his mission was. In fact, the good news of Jesus is him bringing the kingdom of heaven to the kingdom of earth. And at this moment, the birth of Jesus opens up the heavens and allows them to come face to face with the most earthly, normal, everyday people in the shepherds. Jesus brings together the young and the old, the angels and the shepherds. He brings together the nobility and the commoners, the people and the animals. But most importantly, John 1:14, the Word, Jesus, became flesh and blood, and he moved into the neighborhood. You see, the story of Jesus and this crazy cast of characters that he puts together, these seemingly random groups of people between the young and the old, the commoners and the nobility, the haves and the have-nots, the angels and the shepherds, the people and the animals. All of that story was put together so that God could bring one very important union together. See, Jesus brought God and man together. If we went back to what we call the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, we got a really quick picture of how Christmas got its start. Christmas got its start because you and I decided we wanted to do things our own way. And our own way didn't make God so mad that he threw a lightning bolt at us, right? He didn't say, just because you did what was wrong, you were going to have to die. He said, listen, if you live life separated from the life that I give you, it will kill you. And that's what we chose. We chose sin. We chose to walk away. But God, we talked about this last week, loved us so much. The most Christmassy verse, the one we teach our children, John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. We talked about it last week, how valuable giving is and how God gave because God loved. It's a powerful thing, and that's exactly what Jesus did. He didn't just bring nobility and commoners together. He didn't just bring the young and the old together. This story didn't didn't unite the people of heaven and the people of earth. This story, Jesus brought God and man together when the Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. There's the words of a hymn. It's an old hymn. It says, Jesus paid a debt he did not owe because we had a debt that we could not pay. Maybe you remember the tune from being around church when you were a kid. We didn't sing this one a lot. I don't remember it, but I do remember this statement because this statement is powerful. Jesus paid a debt. He put on flesh and became a man and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. He paid a debt he did not owe because you and I had a debt that we could not pay. That's what John says this. The difference that it should make in our life is by this: everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Because the idea of Christmas wasn't just to bring people together. It was to send people on a mission. The idea of Jesus becoming a man and becoming obedient to death, reconciling God and man, wasn't just to reconcile us to man, it was to send us out on a mission. You see, the intention of his love for us was to model what real love for us is. Real love for us brings people together. And that's why Jesus said that. Jesus says, by this, everyone's going to know that you're my disciples because you wear my t-shirts, right? Because you decorate your house for Christmas. By this, everyone will know you're my disciples because you have bumper stickers, right? No. He says that you'll know that you're my disciples because you do what I do. You love one another. Jesus brings people together. It doesn't just unite people for a story, right? Jesus' birth united the young and the old, the commoners and the nobility. It united the people of heaven, the people of earth. But Jesus' love does more than just put everybody together on the same stage for a moment. It propels us into a mission. Jesus' love gives you and me, you and I, a mission that we can live out outside of this moment of our life, a mission that we can put our hands on. It brings people together and then mobilizes them. Look at the way he says it. John says, greater love has no man than this, to lay down his life for his friends. You see, Jesus' love wasn't just intended to unite people all together, different kinds of people around one story. It was to give us all a story to live for. because Christmas is always about bringing things together. I mean, go back to the beginning when we talked, right? Brings us together on the streets, brings us together in the shopping centers, brings us together in the office. People that you don't normally socialize with, all of a sudden you're hanging out with, right? Christmas brings people together. It brings your family together. Christianity, this whole idea of Jesus coming, is a mission for us. Not just an idea to be thought of or reflected on, but something to be lived out and followed. The way Paul puts it is this. He says, all of this comes from God who settled the relationship between us and him, and then calls us to settle our relationships with each other. Other translations say this, calls this the ministry of reconciliation. You see, God settled his relationship between him and us, and then asks us to go settle our relationships with each other. So really what Christmas is all about, and what makes it the craziest thing, is just simply this. God corrals or puts together an unbelievable cast of characters. God puts that cast of characters together, not just to bring them together for a moment, but to propel them into a mission that he calls them to. And he sends you and I out to live Christmas. It becomes alive in us. Then he expects us to go live it out. I love how he says it here. He settled the relationship between us and him, and then calls us to settle our relationships with each other. So living Christmas out means forgiving. It means working with the relationships with people that we have. My guess is as soon as I said that, there's somebody that pops into your mind. Maybe a friend, an aunt, an uncle, a brother, a sister, a mom, or a dad that you've been at tension with. And I'm not saying you got to just wash it all over. And I'm not saying that forgiving means you got to let them walk all over you again. What I am saying is that you and I, if we want to live out this bringing together, this reconciliation that is what Christmas is really about, is us giving an opportunity to forgive. So maybe you need to have a conversation with somebody. Maybe you need to say, listen, I'm going to stop holding that over your head. I'm going to stop holding the grudge for that. Maybe you don't even have to tell them. Maybe it's just something you need to do inside, something that you need to go work through and give God and say, God, I trust that your message brought together the most random, crazy group of characters. You brought together the young and the old. You brought together the commoners and the nobility. You brought together people and animals and the angels and mankind. You brought together me and you, and then you asked me to go settle my relationships with people. Maybe what Christmas needs to be about for you is releasing someone else from the burden of your grudge. Maybe that's what you need to give away. Because Christmas means living out this forgiving mission. The next thing I think is that Christmas means giving. If we're going to live Christmas out, we know it's about gift giving, right? But I don't know that it's necessarily just about wrapping up a gift. You know, that idea of wrapping up gifts and giving them to our friends and our family, it's kind of lost something, hasn't it? I mean, when we set price limits and go, hey, you can spend $50. You spend $50 and they spend $50 and you kind of exchange $50 gifts, and it begs the question, why don't I just go get my own $50 gift and I just wave at you at the store, you know? But giving is a part of what Christmas is, because it's exactly it. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. God loved, so God gave. We experience God's love, and so we give, just like we forgive. Can I challenge you with something? Here at the end of 2022, we have been knocking it out of the park all year long in kids ministry and student ministry and all kinds of different areas. You heard from Chuck last week as he talked about how we're winning with student ministry. I'd like you to hear from Tiffany, who leads our kids ministry, and she does a phenomenal job. Check this out.
Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany Johnston. I have been the Journey Kids Director for the past 3 years, and I have had the ultimate privilege to serve alongside 75 adults and teens who help our kids, infants through 5th grade, take their next step toward Jesus. I don't know about you, but I feel like this world is not getting any better. We have this enemy who is continuously attacking our schools, our kids, our thoughts, and our faith. Somebody's got to do something about it, and we are the somebodies. Journey Kids is focused on helping kids get on the right path before that enemy attacks. We have the opportunity with over 250 kids that attend Journey to pour the love of Jesus into them as soon as they are born. Each Sunday we focus on worship songs that praise our Father for the life He has given us, as well as verses that get written on our hearts. We have already walked through the entire Old Testament and are beginning the New Testament, and we lay it all at His feet before we go back into this world to fight. This is a safe place. This is where every child will feel loved and valued. This is where they will take more and more steps deeper in the relationship with Jesus, and where every family will grow together and be the somebodies this world needs. And we couldn't offer any of this without your help. Your giving has already made a huge difference. The past year, we've invested in Journey Kids more than we ever have before. More and more families are connecting and building relationships through our events, such as fun relational meetups outside Journey throughout the whole year. Winterfest provided some indoor fun to our community during the cold months. Parents Night Out, where the kids think it's all for them, but really we value the time mom and dads need to refresh and refocus. Moms Group, where we share life together and support one another. And other fun things like the Cookies and PJs party we just had to celebrate Jesus' birthday. Kids are connecting with other kids, teaming up to take on this world together. We had over 125 kids attend Kid Fest, where they learned that when life is scary or sad, God is always good and always with them. And over 50 first through fifth graders attended church camp this summer, where they learned that they were made for a purpose to go and make some waves and change the world around them. Many attended on scholarships and discounts due to your giving. The crazy part of this whole thing is that we have even bigger plans for Journey Kids this next year. Your help in our One Crazy Christmas offering will make a significant difference in how we help kids and their families take their next steps toward Jesus at Journey. Thank you.
Can I point this out? We talked about this last week. The craziest part of Christmas is that God, who became man, invites you and me to join Him. That He puts this crazy cast of characters together, people like Chuck and their team at our student ministry, and Tiffany and our Journey Kids folks, and all the team that work together to help kids take their next step toward Jesus and encourage families. And I believe that God has done some amazing things, but He calls you and I together to join Him on mission. You know, we talked about this last week of how we've been winning in so many different areas. I mean, we've been really working hard, and we've done more with less this year than we've ever done before. But can I challenge you? As we're wrapping up this year, we're putting together this One Crazy Christmas offering to help us end well, to shore up the end of this year and put us in a position where we can win next year. Because honestly, we've won in lots of areas, but we've strongly battled against our economic pressures and gas prices, and giving has just been an area of our life together that's been difficult. So can I challenge you? Maybe one way that you can live Christmas is for you to choose to be a part of our One Crazy Christmas offering. And I'll promise you this, every single dollar will go to help people take their next step toward Jesus, who brings us together.